In this video, we're going to look at the different trig functions on the coordinate plane and where they are positive or negative. For example, if we put our theta in quadrant 1 and we look at the sine, SIGN values of the opposite side and the adjacent side, the opposite side is positive and the adjacent side is positive because all points in quadrant 1 are positive and positive. Our hypotenuse is always going to be positive no matter what quadrant we're in. So if we're in quadrant 1, we can see that our opposite over our hypotenuse is adjacent, that's our sine. So is our adjacent over our hypotenuse, that's also positive, and our opposite over our adjacent is positive. So all things in quadrant 1 are positive. So if sine, cosine, and tangent are all positive, that means that secant, cosecant, and cotangent are also positive. Let's go ahead and take a look at quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, we notice that we have negative x values and positive y values, which means if we're looking at theta in this quadrant, and remember, this is going to be our reference angle. Even though theta goes from the positive x-axis to the terminal side, we use this acute angle in order to get our trig ratios. The opposite side is positive, the adjacent side is negative, and the hypotenuse is always positive. So if we're looking at the sine in quadrant 2, the sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. That's going to be positive. The cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. The cosine is going to be negative. And the tangent is opposite over adjacent, so opposite over adjacent is going to be negative. So if you look at quadrant 2, the only thing that's positive in quadrant 2 is the sine. Okay? Everything in quadrant 1 was positive. So if we kind of focus on the positives and we figure out what's positive in which quadrant, we know where everything is negative as well. All right, similarly in quadrant 3, what we've got going on here is the x's are negative and so are the y's. So again, if our reference angle, and we're getting a little messy here, so I'm going to erase some of this stuff that we've already done. Our reference angle goes from the positive x-axis all the way to the terminal side, but we're going to use this acute angle to represent our theta. So our theta lies right here between the x-axis and this terminal side. And in this triangle, our opposite side is negative, our adjacent side is negative, and our hypotenuse is positive because it's always positive. So if we look at this quadrant, our sine values are going to be opposite over hypotenuse. They are going to be negative. Our cosine are adjacent over our hypotenuse. Our cosines are also negative, and our tangents are opposite over adjacent. Negative divided by negative would be positive. So our tangents in this quadrant are positive. So the thing that's positive in quadrant 3 is tangent. All right, moving on to quadrant 4. I'm going to do a little cleanup here. In quadrant 4, if I draw my triangle, and remember, our reference triangle, our reference angle is this theta, but our actual theta is this angle. So our theta is extremely obtuse. We're in quadrant 3. We have a positive x value and a negative y value, which means our opposite side is negative and our adjacent side is positive and the hypotenuse is positive. So our sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Negative divided by a positive is negative. Our cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Positive divided by a positive is positive. And our tangent is opposite over adjacent. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. So in quadrant 4, the cosine is positive. This is really important information to remember as you go through and identify which angles are positive and negative in which quadrants. So make sure you kind of have this in your notes. This would be something excellent to put in your conjecture notebook. So if you have some extra time today, I would say organize this, clean it up, and put it into your conjecture notebook so that it's easy to study and find when you need it.